You know what not a lot of YouTubers talk about? They don't really talk about the fact that this is, generally speaking, probably an aspiration for them, which means that they most likely have a full-time or a part-time job to pay the bills with. And there is a 100% chance that the company that they work for is not on board at all with what it is that they're doing, despite the fact that it's not graphic, it's not risque in any way, shape, or form, and they will most likely fire that person over it, but they can't be direct and upfront about it because, well, that's kind of sort of just illegal and unethical, and it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So they'll find a couple of other reasons over here. They'll build a case on that person and say, yeah, not really lining up over here, so we're gonna get rid of you. But that person is smarter than that, and they can say, it has nothing to do with this stuff over here, and everything to do with all of the YouTube stuff over here, even though it's not a distraction in any way, shape, or form. And, well, let me explain. I'm SD, and if you're new, I show people how to tailor their own clothes at home. And, well, like a lot of people, I still have bills to pay too, so what did I do? Well, I worked in addition to all of this YouTube stuff. And the majority of my life, I've been in sales. The majority of my adult life, I've been in sales. And I've been really apprehensive about ever taking that dive into corporate America. So I never did. So I worked a lot of different odds and end jobs, a lot of different things where I either didn't make really any money at all, or I made like okay money. It was what it was. Barely kind of made it, barely scraped by. And I finally had that opportunity to take a dive into corporate America and say, you know what? I'm gonna try this out. I'm gonna see what this is all about. I might hate it. There's a lot of things that made me really apprehensive about it, but I will never know unless I do it. So I did. And let me tell you, it's amazing being salaried, having benefits, and just having that peace of mind of this is how much money I'm going to make this month. Sweet, I don't have to like pick up shifts or really budget hard on things and all that kind of stuff. Well, it sounds wonderful. And it really was for a long time. What I ended up kind of realizing is that I'm good at it. I'm really good at it. I love sales. I love sales because I love being passionate about something. I love selling myself more so than what it is that I'm offering, because what I was able to identify and realize is the fact that you and me right now, it's me telling you a story. It's us two making a connection, and me knowing what it is that I have to offer will move itself because you trust me, because I'm talking to you and I'm able to identify with you and I'm able to make that connection, and you say, oh, sweet, he's not being super direct and upfront about what it is he's trying to sell. He's just telling me a story, and I really like that about him. I was a realtor, and based off of what I'm about to say next, you'll know exactly which brokerage I was with. Do you know anybody who would like to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? That was always hammered into our heads in the beginning. And when you are a new realtor and you don't know any better, you just kind of think, all right, that must be the way that it's done. You just ask people if they know anybody who would like to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. But I caught on pretty quickly to the fact that that's not really the best way to go about doing that. And the reason for that is because that's not how I want to be sold. In fact, I don't want to be sold at all. I don't want to feel like a cog in your wheel of your sales process. No, have a normal conversation with me. Come up to me and talk to me about anything at all besides what it is that you do. And that's because, generally speaking, people can figure out what it is that you do, especially when you're a realtor. I mean, it's already all over all of your social media pages. You're most likely gonna be wearing a name tag that has your name on it, which brokerage that you're with. People aren't dumb. They're gonna put it together. You don't really need to ask. Talk to them about anything. So that's what I would do. I would have totally normal conversations with people about how terribly the Vikings were playing that year and how we're probably gonna lose in the NFC Championship game again. And you know what ended up happening? Well, people didn't necessarily know at that time as to whether or not they knew anybody who was looking to buy a house or if they knew anybody who was looking to make a move, but they remembered me and they remembered our conversation. If I had a conversation with them about their kids' birthdays and how they probably got some Shopkins for their birthday, and the Shopkins didn't even last for 20 minutes because they opened them up in the car and they just went poof all over the place underneath the seats, and that's where they're going to live until them as a parent, they go to vacuum out their car like 2 or 3 weeks later or a month later, and you hear pluck, 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 pluck. You just hear those Shopkins going in the vacuum. Every parent can identify with those things. Make that connection and they remember it and they say, oh, I didn't know somebody at that time. We were having that conversation about real estate, but oh, my cousin's looking to buy a house. They were going to school out in Arizona and now they want to buy a house. They're moving back here to Minnesota. Yeah, I'd love for you to help them out. As opposed to the opposite, the very direct way of going about it. Do you know anybody who wants to buy a house? Even if they do know somebody who wants to buy a house, they don't really trust you. You're way too thirsty. Just way too thirsty for that sale. Just, don't do that. It makes you really not miss real estate. Even just telling you the story and talking about this is giving me anxiety where I'm like, I remember that. I remember a lot of realtors doing just that. I remember a lot of realtors approaching their business that way, and I'm just kind of standing back like, it's pretty straightforward and aggressive. How's that working out for you? It's not? I didn't really think so. And that's good and great and grand and all, but what I was also able to identify and realize is that, well, when you work in corporate America, it is very structured in a way. They like creativity as long as it's in line with what they want you to be creative on and about. And I'm a very outside of the box thinker. I am a very just kind of looking at what it is that everybody else is doing and saying, well, if they're all doing that, why don't I do this that nobody else is doing? Because it's not saturated. So that's what I do. Like, that's kind of my thought process and my mindset of how I approach things. And again, that's great as long as it's in line with what it is that they want and what it is that they're looking for. The biggest mistake that I made was let these words leave my mouth. I am a YouTuber. Now, when I first said it, it didn't really seem like it was that big of a deal. It didn't seem like it would turn into a big deal. And at the time, it wasn't a big deal. These are just kind of figurative numbers. 10 people found out about it, right? Well, 7 of them were super enthusiastic about it and really supportive, like, hey man, that's really cool. That's really creative. I really like what it is that you're doing. But there's 3 people who are not on board with what it is that you're doing at all. And those 3 people, they might not be direct with you. They might not come to you and tell you to your face that they're not really a fan of what you're doing on social media. Again, despite the fact that it's not risque, it's not graphic, it's not anything like that, but words start to kind of get around. There's rumblings that can go on behind the scenes. There's conversations that are had. There's emails that are sent and passed and forwarded of, just kind of whispers like, let's keep an eye on this. And I'm over here like, oh, awesome. I can leverage this to my advantage. I can leverage this to our advantage. Because you see, what ended up happening is there was a lot of competitors out there who were in the same space that we were in, who had YouTube channels, who had bigger social media presences. And it was kind of funny because I looked at it, and to the average person, they would look at, let's say, company XYZ's YouTube channel, and they'd say, wow, they have X number of subscribers. They must be doing really well. This is really cool. But to anybody who explores this space, to anybody who starts a YouTube channel and grows it to a relatively decent size, you would have looked at any of these channels. You would have been like, this channel is terrible. Their thumbnails are awful. Their titles are horrible. They don't use any playlist, or they're not using them to any kind of advantage at all. It's just a big jumbly mess of nonsense. Yo, guys, the bar is really, really low. It's not gonna take that much work for us to stand out in this space. It's not gonna take that much work for us to go, all right, well, if this dude already knows YouTube and kind of how it works and how to leverage that to our advantage, we should totally take advantage of that. Yeah, that's what those 7 people thought, but Remember those 3 people over there that I told you about? Yeah. Very rarely in life are you ever presented with situations where you can identify the beginning, you can identify the end, and you can pinpoint that spot right in the middle where things took that shift, things took a change. Well, this is one of those rare stories and those rare situations where I can identify and I can say it was at that moment right there where everything shifted and everything went in a direction that I really just didn't want it to go in, nor did I foresee it going in. Without divulging too much information or giving out too many identifying characteristics, what you could do is you could go to our company's website and you could have a conversation with me. Now, you could be an existing customer or you could be a new customer. If you're an existing customer who needs some technical help or you need some help with your account, I can help you with that. If you are a new customer who just has some questions on, let's say, pricing and things like that, hardware information, I can help you with that as well. Now, imagine you come to said website, I help you, I answer your questions for you, and you carry on your merry way. All is good and great and grand in the hood, right? Yeah, it is, because I did my job, but here's what ended up happening. I handled one of those conversations on our website. Everything went perfectly fine. I was having a normal conversation. I was answering their questions in the sequential order that I'm supposed to go through it, because there's kind of a process that you go about it. I answer all their questions. I let them be on their way. I get an email from someone within the organization who had completely picked apart and cherry-picked that conversation. And by that I mean, they kind of created a narrative as to what they were trying to spin and said, here's an example of this, here's an example of this, and here is an example of this. These are my findings and my conclusions as to how that conversation went. This is something that we need to work on. This is something that we got to get you in the right space and headed in the right direction. But the thing is, your boy SD doesn't really take criticism very well, especially when he knows that he's right. Especially when he knows that that argument is being cherry-picked, especially when he can look at that narrative that is trying to be spun, complete with screenshots, and I can look at that conversation and say, well, wait a minute, you picked this example, and this example to fit your narrative, but you took out these 2 big chunks right in here of where their questions were answered or where I did provide relevant information, but weird, you omitted those parts. That's odd. And I countered back with those examples and I was like, whoa, hang on. That ain't what happened in this conversation at all. And I can read between the lines. So let's dig a little bit deeper into this and let's figure out if this is going to be a good fit. Like I said, that was that pivotal moment. Don't mess with any higher ups at all. Don't ever bring up anything regarding HR because HR, they ain't got your back. They have your company's back. And I knew that before, but you still kind of want to go through that process. And then things just spiraled out of control from there. So I get put on what's called a performance improvement plan, which is code for we're going to fire you. We just need to get all of our legal proceedings in place first so that you can come back and sue us, especially with what's going on with, the whole minorities and 2020 and 2021, all of that stuff. You're gonna be fired, but we gotta make a plan first. And at the end of the day, my numbers just didn't really get much better, despite the fact that nobody's numbers got better because, well, it was the middle of a pandemic. We went our separate ways. It was what it was. All because I'm a YouTuber and I teach people how to tailor their own clothes online. And that being said, I don't know how long this video is going to be up. I have to find a new job. So in the event that that happens, this video might go poof and disappear. And if you're a YouTuber or you want to do anything on social media that's creative or outside of the box, that's awesome. I commend you for that. But don't tell anybody, especially the people you work with, because yeah, you might run into 7 who are totally on board with it, but those 3 people over there who aren't on board with it, they're the ones that sign your paychecks. So watch your back. SD out. See ya.